You know that feeling when you scroll through a dozen laptops, each promising studio-grade graphics or unbeatable performance, and you start wondering if any of them will actually fit the way you work and play? The fear of spending a premium on a machine that ends up sitting half-filled with unused power is real, especially when the price tag is high enough to make you double-check every spec. I've been in that spot more than once, and before I hit record I dug into a handful of forums, watched a few tech deep dives, and read the comments on the Lenovo ThinkPad P16v Gen 2 to see where the hype meets the everyday. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. In the next few minutes I'll break down whether this 16-inch mobile workstation actually delivers value for the kind of workloads and occasional gaming sessions you might have, and I'll point out the hidden trade-offs that don't show up on the spec sheet. First off, let's talk about who this laptop is really built for. The ThinkPad P16v Gen 2 is marketed as a workstation, and that's not just a label. It comes with a desktop-class GPU, an Intel Core Ultra 9 vPro CPU, and up to 64 GB of DDR5 memory. If you spend a lot of time in CAD software like SolidWorks, run heavy 3D rendering engines, or train small machine learning models on the go, those components matter. The RTX 3000 Ada generation GPU, for example, isn't the top-of-the-line RTX 4090, but it gives you enough CUDA cores and ray tracing support to handle most professional visualization tasks without forcing you into a desktop rig. The 2TB PCIe Gen 4 SSD also means that large project files load in seconds, and you won't be constantly watching a progress bar when you swap between Photoshop layers or open a complex Revit model. Now, if you're a casual gamer who just wants to pop in a few titles after work, this might feel like overkill. The display is a 16-inch WQUXGA panel, 19201200, with 300 nits brightness and a 45% NTSC color gamut. It's fine for productivity and even for some indie games, but you won't get the deep blacks or the vibrant color range you'd find on a high-end gaming laptop with a 100% sRGB or DCI-P3 panel. For someone who spends evenings on AAA titles that push 144 Hz refresh rates, the 60 Hz panel and modest color space could be a letdown. In short, the P16v leans toward accurate, work-oriented visuals rather than cinematic gaming immersion. One of the biggest practical strengths I noticed is how the workstation balances power and portability. At roughly 5.5 kilograms, it's definitely not a slim and light ultrabook, but it's still manageable for a daily commute if you're used to a briefcase-sized machine. The keyboard retains that classic ThinkPad feel: deep travel, tactile feedback, and a dedicated numeric keypad, which is a pleasant surprise for anyone who still crunches numbers or codes for hours. The 5MP RGB plus IR camera with a privacy shutter is a small but thoughtful addition for remote meetings, especially when you need Windows Hello facial recognition for quick logins. On the flip side, the battery life is a practical weakness you'll feel in real-world use. With the Core Ultra 9 and an RTX 3000 pulling power under load, the 80Wh battery barely makes it past 5 hours when you're doing intensive rendering or running simulations. If you're planning to work unplugged for a full day, you'll need to either keep a charger handy or consider a secondary power bank. That's not a deal-breaker for most workstation users, who usually have access to power at their desks, but it's something to keep in mind if you travel a lot. Thermals are another area where the design shows its trade-off. Lenovo's ThinkPad line has a reputation for solid cooling, and the P16v is no exception. The dual-fan system keeps the CPU temperatures under 90°C even during a stress test in Blender, but you'll notice the fans ramp up to a noticeable hum after a while. In a quiet office or a shared workspace, that fan noise could be mildly distracting. It's not a constant roar, but it's louder than you'd expect from a laptop that's supposed to be a mobile workstation. Software-wise, Windows 11 Pro adds a few enterprise features like BitLocker and Remote Desktop, which can be handy if you need to connect to a corporate network securely. The pre-installed Lenovo Vantage app lets you toggle performance modes, but I found the performance setting to be a simple power plan toggle rather than a deep customization suite. It's enough for most users, but power users who love fine-tuning may feel a little restricted compared to building a custom BIOS profile on a pure gaming laptop. Let's talk about the price-to-value equation. At its launch price, the P16v sits in the upper mid-range of mobile workstations. You're paying for the 64GB of RAM and the 2TB SSD, which together represent a sizable chunk of the cost. If you're someone who can upgrade RAM later, you might find a lower config model that still meets your needs, saving you a few $100s. Conversely, if your workflow truly leans on having all